The last stand of Zephyria Commander, Dex Marintha, pressed his six-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of the command bunker. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the orange glow of burning buildings painting the twilight sky of Zephyria. The peaceful mining colony that had been his home for 23 cycles was dying before his eyes. The Nexari were not warriors. Their pale blue skin and large, intelligent eyes reflected a species that had evolved for thinking, not fighting. They were engineers, scientists, philosophers. They built beautiful cities that floated on repulsor fields and created art that could make other species weep with joy. But they had never learned to kill efficiently. Now they were paying the price for their peaceful nature. Status report, Dex commanded, his voice barely steady. The command center buzzed with activity, as his officers worked frantically at their stations. Warning lights flashed red across every surface, and the constant rumble of distant explosions made the floor vibrate beneath their feet. The western defense grid is completely down, reported Lieutenant Kess, her voice tight with fear. Croxon, ground forces have breached the outer perimeter. They're advancing on the residential districts. Dex closed his large eyes and tried to push down the despair rising in his chest. The Croxon Empire had arrived 3 days ago with a massive fleet of black warships that blotted out Zephyr's twin suns. They had demanded unconditional surrender and the immediate evacuation of all Nexari colonists so they could strip mine the planet's rich deposits of quantum crystals, when the Nexari had politely declined, explaining that Zephyria was their home, and protected under Galactic Council law, the Croxons had left. Then they had started bombing. What about the evacuation shuttles? Dex asked, though he already knew the answer from the lieutenant's expression. All grounded, sir. The Croxon fighters are shooting down anything that tries to leave the atmosphere. We're trapped. Dr. Asila Vorthuk, the colony's chief scientist, looked up from her workstation. Her usually pristine white laboratory coat was stained with dust and sweat. Commander, I've been analyzing their attack patterns. The Croxons aren't just trying to capture our mining equipment. They're systematically destroying every structure, every piece of infrastructure. This isn't conquest. What is it then? Vex asked, though part of him already knew. Extermination. They want us gone. Completely. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The Croxons were known throughout the galaxy for their brutality, but even they usually left survivors to work as slaves. The fact that they were attempting total annihilation meant something had changed in their strategy. Another explosion rocked the bunker, closer this time. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and several officers stumbled. Through the communications array, panicked voices crackled through the static. Command, this is Sector 7. We're being overrun. The Croxons have some kind of new weapon. It's cutting through our barriers like they're made of paper. Sector 12 here. Civilians are trapped in the lower levels. We need immediate evacuation. Support. Command, respond. We're taking heavy casualties. They're not taking prisoners. They're killing everyone. Dex wanted to help them all, but he had nothing left to give. The Nexari Defense Force consisted of engineers operating mining equipment that had been hastily converted into weapons. They were brave, but they were facing professional soldiers from one of the galaxy's most feared military powers. Sir, called out communications officer Relm from across the room. I'm picking up something strange. There's a signal coming from deep space, but it's not Croxon. Identify it. Vex ordered, grasping at any hope. No matter how slim, Relm's fingers danced across his console, his face scrunched in concentration. It's very old, sir. The encryption is ancient, but the pattern is familiar. It matches something in our historical databases. Dr. Vorthik rushed over to Realm Station, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. Let me see those readings. She studied the data stream scrolling across the screen, her large eyes widening with each passing moment. This is impossible. What? Is it? Dex demanded. It's a human signal, she whispered. But that can't be right. Humans disappeared from known space over 200 years ago. After the Great Silence, everyone assumed they were extinct. Dex felt a chill run down his spine. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories of humanity. They had been one of the most aggressive and adaptable species ever encountered, spreading across space with frightening speed, but they had also been protectors, forming alliances with peaceful species and standing against oppression wherever they found it. Then, suddenly, they had vanished. All human colonies had gone silent simultaneously. Their ships had disappeared from trade routes. Entire human worlds had become ghost towns overnight. The mystery of the Great Silence had puzzled xenarchaeologists for generations. Play the signal, Dex ordered. The bunker filled with static. Then a voice emerged. It was speaking an accented Galactic standard, but there was something about the tone that made everyone stop what they were doing. This is Emergency Protocol 77 Alpha. Human expeditionary forces are responding to automated distress beacon. Nexary colony designation Zephyria. We have received your call for aid. Hostile forces identified as Croxan Empire. Response authorization confirmed. Sanctuary protocols are now in effect. Hold your positions. We are coming. The transmission cut to static, leaving the command bunker in stunned silence. Several officers looked at each other with confusion and disbelief. Humans were myths now, stories told to children about the fierce protectors who had once roamed the stars. It has to be a mistake, Lieutenant Kess said quietly. Some kind of automated system still running after all these years. But Dr. Vorthek was studying her instruments with growing excitement. No, look at these readings. There are massive energy signatures moving through hyperspace. Something big is coming. Before anyone could respond, the entire bunker shook with a different kind of vibration. This wasn't an explosion or weapon impact. It was something else, something that seemed to make the very air hum with electricity. What's happening? X. Asta. Lieutenant Kess was staring at her tactical display with an expression of complete bewilderment. Sir, I am detecting multiple objects entering our atmosphere. They're not coming from the Croxan ships. They're coming from above, from outside. Our solar system. Show me, Dex ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing a view of Zephyria's night sky. At first, there was nothing but stars and the distant glow of the Croxan fleet. Then, one by one, points of light began to appear. They were small at first, like shooting stars, but they were moving with purpose and precision. Those are drop pods, Dr. Vorthek breathed. Military insertion vehicles. But whose? The answer came from the communications array as a new voice cut through the static. This one was crisp, professional, and absolutely human. Nexari Forces, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the 47th Human Expeditionary Marines. We are beginning atmospheric insertion. Clear the landing zones and prepare for immediate tactical coordination. The cavalry has arrived. Dex stared at the display as dozens, then hundreds of the mysterious pods began their descent toward the planet's surface. Each one was surrounded by a controlled entry burn that lit up the sky like a second sunrise. They were landing in a perfect grid pattern around the Croxan positions, creating a containment formation that spoke of military precision beyond anything the Nexari had ever witnessed. Impossible, whispered one of the officers. Humans are extinct. But the evidence was falling from the sky all around them. The drop pods struck the surface with tremendous impacts that sent shockwaves through the ground. Each landing site erupted in a pillar of dust and debris, but through it all, the pods kept coming. On the communications channel, panicked Croxan. Voices began to crackle through as their secured frequencies were somehow intercepted and broadcast. Command, we have multiple unknown contacts landing in grid formation around our positions. They're not Nexari. Unknown vessels. Identify yourselves immediately or face destruction. Sir, our sensors can't penetrate their stealth systems. We don't know what we're dealing with. For the first time in 3 days, Dex felt something other than despair. He didn't know what was happening, but the Croxans sounded afraid. And anything that could frighten the Croxan Empire was something he wanted on his side. The drop pods had stopped calling. But now something else was happening. The Croxan ground forces, which had been advancing steadily toward the Nexari positions, had suddenly stopped. Their communications were becoming increasingly frantic. Movement detected at insertion sites. Unknown contacts emerging from pods. Visual confirmation. Dear Creator, what are these things? Open fire. Open fire on everything. The night sky erupted with weapon fire as the Croxan forces began shooting at targets the Nixari couldn't see. But the return fire was something else entirely. Brilliant streams of energy cut through the darkness with surgical precision, and the Croxan positions began to explode one by one. They're fighting back, Lieutenant Kess said in amazement. Whoever they are, they're actually fighting the Croxans. Through the chaos of battle, Captain Chen's voice came through the communications array again. Calm and professional, despite the war erupting around her. Nexari Command, this is Chen. We're engaging hostile forces now. Keep your people in the shelters until we give the all clear. This is going to get loud. As if summoned by her words, a series of massive explosions lit up the horizon. The Croxan advance had not only stopped, it was being pushed back. Vex watched in fascination and growing hope as the tide of battle began to turn. Commander, Dr. Vorthik said quietly, I'm reading some incredible energy signatures from those human positions. Their weapons technology is at least 2 centuries. More advanced than anything in our databases. They've been gone for 200 years, Vex replied. What have they been doing all this time? Before anyone could answer, the communications array crackled with a new transmission. This one was different from the others. It was broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously, and the voice that spoke was filled with cold authority. Croxan forces. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Fleet. You are in violation of Sanctuary Protocol 77 Alpha. You have 30 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal from this system, or we will consider your presence inactive. War against humanity and its protected allies. The words sent a chill through the bunker. Protected allies. Somehow, without knowing it, without asking for it, the Nexari had become protected by humanity. The Croxan response was predictable. Their Supreme Commander's voice boomed through. The communications array filled with arrogance and rage. Unknown human forces, you are interfering with a legitimate military operation of the Croxan Empire. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. We outnumber you 1,000 to 1. Admiral Vasquez's response was simple and terrifying in its calm certainty. 30 seconds are up. All units, weapons free. Show them why they should have stayed home. The night sky exploded into the most beautiful and terrible display of military might Bex had ever witnessed. And for the first time in 3 days, he began to believe that his people might actually survive. The humans had returned, and they had brought war with them. When legends returned, the first thing Captain Sarah-chan noticed when her drop pod cracked. Open was the smell. Zephyria's air carried the scent of burning crystal dust and ozone, mixed with something else that made her jaw clench with anger, fear. The acrid stench of terror that came from innocent people facing death. She stepped out of her pod with fluid grace, her black combat armor gleaming under the light of the burning city. The HUD in her helmet immediately began cataloging targets, marking Croxan positions in angry red dots across her field of vision. Behind her, 47 other pods had landed in perfect formation, and she could hear her Marines emerging with the practiced efficiency of soldiers who had done this dance 1,000 times before. Sound off, she commanded into her comm system. First squad ready for action, came Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez's gravelly voice. These ugly lizards picked the wrong planet to mess with. Second squad operational, reported Corporal Kim Okafor. Weapons hot, targets acquired. One by one, her Marines confirmed their readiness. Each soldier was a veteran of conflicts that the peaceful species of the galaxy couldn't even imagine. They had trained in the gravity wells of gas giants, fought in the radioactive ruins of dead worlds, and learned to kill in environments that would instantly destroy most life forms. They were humanity's answer to a hostile universe, and they had been waiting 2 centuries for this moment. Chun's tactical display showed Croxan forces converging on their position from 3 directions. The aliens clearly thought they were dealing with another group of desperate refugees trying to make a last stand. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Listen up, Marines," Chun broadcasted to her entire company. "These Croxan scum think they can roll in here and butcher innocent civilians. They think the galaxy is theirs for the taking because they've never met anyone willing to punch back. Today, we remind them why humans are called Deathworlders." A chorus of harsh laughter and battle cries answered her. The 47th Expeditionary Marines had been forged in the crucible of humanity's exile. 200 years of preparing for the day they would return to protect the weak from the strong. Every Marine carried weapons that were decades ahead of anything the current galactic powers possessed, and they had been enhanced with cybernetic implants that made them faster, stronger, and deadlier than baseline humans. Chun checked her chronometer. The Croxan assault force would reach their position in 90 seconds, more than enough time. "Rodriguez, take first squad and hit their left flank. Make it loud and messy. I want them to think we're just another group of desperate defenders." "Copy that, Captain." "Loud and messy is my specialty. Okafor, your squad takes the right. Wait for my signal, then show them what a real flanking maneuver looks like." "Understood, ma'am." "They won't know what hit them." Chun smiled grimly inside her helmet. The Croxans had made 2 fatal mistakes. First, they had assumed that the peaceful Nixari were helpless. Second, they had never learned the most important rule of galactic politics: never hurt someone under human protection. The ground began to vibrate with the approaching Croxan assault vehicles. Through her helmet's enhanced vision, Chun could see them clearly. Massive, spider-like war machines bristling with weapons, supported by troops in power armor that looked impressive until you compared it to human military technology. "Contact in 30 seconds, she announced. "Remember your training. These things are tough, but they're not invincible. Aim for the joint connections on their war machines, and don't waste ammo on their armor. Go for the gaps." The Croxan force crested the hill in front of their position like a metallic avalanche. There were at least 200 of them, supported by a dozen of their infamous Deathstalker assault mechs. Each mech stood 4 meters tall and carried enough firepower to level a city block. Chun waited until they were within optimal range, then gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. "All units, weapons free. Show them what humanity learned during the long exile." The night erupted in controlled violence. Chun's assault rifle spat streams of hypervelocity rounds that punched through Croxan armor like it was made of cardboard. Around her, her Marines opened fire with weapons that sang death songs in frequencies that made the very air scream. The Croxan advance faltered immediately. Their front ranks simply disappeared under the withering accurate fire. The Deathstalker mechs, which had terrorized countless worlds, found themselves facing opponents who moved faster than their targeting systems could track. Sergeant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system, accompanied by the sound of explosions. "First squad in position. These ugly bastards shoot like stormtroopers with blindfolds on." Chun watched her tactical display as Rodriguez's team carved through the Croxan left flank like a surgical blade. Each Marine was worth a dozen regular soldiers, and they fought with the precision that came from knowing exactly how dangerous they were. "Second squad, execute flanking maneuver," Chun ordered. Corporal Okavar's squad materialized from seemingly nowhere, their active camouflage systems dropping as they struck the Croxan right flank with devastating effect. The aliens found themselves caught in a crossfire that their tactics had never prepared them for. But it was Chen's own actions that truly demonstrated the gap between human and Croxan military capability. She charged directly into the center of their formation, her powered armor allowing her to leap over their war machines and land among their infantry. Her combat knife extended into a molecular blade that could cut through any known material, and she began to systematically dismantle their command structure. The Croxan soldiers scattered in panic. They had never faced an enemy who moved like this, who fought with such calculated fury. Their own weapons seemed pathetically inadequate against the human armor. and their tactics crumbled against opponents who had been trained to fight in conditions that would kill most life forms. Command, this is Ground Team Alpha, Chen reported, as she decapitated a Croxan officer with surgical precision. First wave of hostiles neutralized. Beginning pursuit of retreating forces. Admiral Vasquez's voice came through the command channel, calm and professional. Understood, Captain. Be advised, we're tracking additional Croxan forces converging on your position. Estimated arrival in 20 minutes. Chun smiled grimly as she watched the surviving Croxans flee in disarray. Copy that, Admiral. We'll be ready for them? But before she could pursue the retreating aliens, her comm system crackled with a new voice. This one was different, more hesitant, and filled with amazement rather than military efficiency. Human forces, this is Commander. Dex Marinta of the Nexari Defense Force. We ... We can't believe what we're seeing. Are you really human? Chun paused in her advance, her helmet automatically switching to the Nexari command frequency. That's affirmative, Commander. Captain Sarah Chen, 47th Expeditionary Marines. We received your distress signal, but how? Humans disappeared 2 centuries ago. We thought you were extinct. We've been busy, Chun replied with characteristic human understatement. Commander, I need you to keep your people in the shelters for another few hours. We're not done here yet. There was a long pause before Lex responded, and when he did, his voice was thick with emotion. Captain Chun, I don't know how to thank you. The Croxans were going to kill everyone. My people, our children, we were preparing to die. Nobody dies on our watch, Commander. That's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. As she spoke, Chen's enhanced hearing picked up the distant sound of approaching aircraft. The Croxans were sending their elite sky. Reaper squadrons, atmospheric fighters that had never been defeated in aerial combat. Marines, we've got incoming air support. Looks like they're bringing the good stuff this time. Rodriguez's laughter echoed through the comm system. About time. I was getting bored shooting at ground targets. The Sky Reapers appeared on the horizon like a swarm of metallic insects, their weapons already charging for attack runs. Each fighter was a masterpiece of Croxan engineering, capable of reducing entire city blocks to rubble in seconds. Chun checked her equipment loadout and smiled. Time to introduce them to human air defense technology. All units, prepare for anti-air operations. Let's show these lizards why control of the sky belongs to whoever's willing to fight for it. She shouldered her portable missile launcher, a weapon that incorporated targeting technology derived from human AI systems that had been evolving for 2 centuries. The Sky Reapers were fast, but they weren't faster than computer-guided projectiles that could think for themselves. The first missile streaked into the sky with a sound like tearing silk. It struck the lead Sky Reaper dead center, and the explosion lit up the night like a miniature sun. The remaining fighters scattered, trying to evade an enemy they couldn't. Understand. But Chun's Marines were already moving, their launchers tracking targets with mechanical precision. One by one, the Sky Reapers fell from the sky, their pilot's final transmission filled with confusion and fear. Impossible, came a panicked Croxan voice over the intercepted communications. How are they shooting us down? Our fighters are. The best in the galaxy. Chun keyed into their frequency, her voice cold and professional. Your fighters were the best in the galaxy. Now you're fighting humans. There's a difference. The last Sky Reaper crashed into the hillside in a ball of flame, and the immediate area fell silent, except for the distant sound of burning wreckage. Chun's tactical display showed no remaining hostile contacts within 50 kilometers. Area secured, she reported. Commander Marinta, it's safe for your people to come out now. Minutes later, Chen found herself standing in the Nexari command bunker, surrounded by aliens who looked at her with expressions of awe and gratitude. Commander. Vex was taller than she had expected, his pale blue skin and large eyes giving him an almost ethereal appearance. Captain Chen, he said formally, on behalf of all Nexari on Zephyria, I want to thank you for what you've done. But I have to ask, where have humans been for the past 2 centuries? Why did you disappear? Chen's expression grew serious. We didn't disappear, Commander. We were preparing. The galaxy was becoming a dangerous place, and we realized that peaceful species like yours would need protection from empires like the Croxans. So we pulled back, built up our strength, and waited for the day when we would be needed. Preparing for 200 years? Dr. Vorthik asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. What kind of preparation requires that long? The kind that lets 48 Marines defeat a Croxan assault force that outnumbered them 50-1, Chan replied simply. We've been learning, evolving, becoming something more than we were, and now we're back. Before anyone could respond, Admiral Vasquez's voice echoed through the bunker's communication system. All units, be advised. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive Croxan fleet approaching from hyperspace. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Looks like they're bringing everything they have. Chan's smile was sharp and predatory. Good, it's about time we had a real fight. Commander Dex looked at her with alarm. Captain, they're bringing their entire battle fleet. Hundreds of ships. Even with your advanced technology, surely you can't fight that many. Chun's response was pure human confidence. Commander, you're about to learn the second rule of dealing with humanity. We don't just fight fair fights. We fight to win, no matter what the odds. She turned to her Marines, who were already checking their equipment and preparing for the next phase of the battle. Marines, looks like we're going to have company. Time to show the galaxy what the 47th can do when we really get serious. The roar of approval that answered her made the bunker walls shake, and for the first time in his life, Commander Dex understood why humans had once been feared across the galaxy. They were about to be reminded why that fear had been justified. The wrath of Earth's children, Admiral. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Retribution, humanity's flagship and the most advanced warship ever constructed. Through the massive viewport, she could see the Croxan battle fleet emerging from hyperspace like a plague of mechanical locusts. 600 ships, including their legendary Fortress-class dreadnoughts that had never been defeated in battle. The Croxan Emperor Thane himself was aboard the command ship Worldbreaker, a vessel so massive it could be seen with the naked eye. From Zephyria's surface, he had come personally to witness what he thought would be the destruction of an upstart human force that dared to interfere with his empire's expansion. He was about to learn why that had been a mistake. Admiral, reported Captain Torres from the tactical station, enemy fleet has completed emergence from hyperspace. They're forming battle formation Delta 7, standard Croxan intimidation pattern. Vasquez nodded, her weathered face calm despite the overwhelming odds. She had served in the Human Defense Fleet for 60 years, rising through the ranks during the long exile, when humanity had withdrawn from galactic politics to prepare for this exact moment. How many ships do we have in the immediate area? She asked. 37 vessels, and the Retribution and her sister ships, plus 2 carrier groups and the stealth frigates. The numbers were absurd. 37 human ships against 600 Croxan vessels. Any military analyst in the galaxy would call it suicide. But those analysts had never seen what human engineering could accomplish when given 2 centuries to evolve without interference. Communications, open a channel to the Croxan flagship, Vasquez ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Worldbreaker. Emperor Thane sat on a throne made from the bones of defeated enemies, his massive reptilian form draped in the ceremonial armor of his rank. His yellow eyes glowed with predatory satisfaction as he looked at the human admiral. So, Thane hissed, his voice like grinding stone. The mythical humans finally show themselves. I am Emperor Thane of the Croxan Empire, conqueror of 1,000 worlds. You will surrender immediately, or I will personally ensure that your deaths are as prolonged and painful as possible. Vasquez regarded the alien emperor with the same expression she might use when examining an interesting but ultimately harmless insect. Emperor Thane, I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Fleet. You have attacked a world under our protection. You have exactly one opportunity to withdraw from this system with your fleet intact. Thane's laughter was like the sound of breaking glass, withdraw from 37 primitive ships. Human, your species was always known for arrogance, but this is beyond stupidity. I will personally watch as my fleet tears your pathetic vessels apart piece by piece. Your choice, Vasquez replied calmly. All units execute Protocol Omega. Show them what humanity has been building. The transformation that followed defied everything the Croxans thought they knew about space warfare. The human ships began to change, their hull sections sliding apart to reveal weapon systems that had never appeared in any galactic military database. The Retribution herself doubled in size as hidden compartments opened to deploy massive particle cannon arrays, but the real surprise came from the empty space around the human fleet. What the Croxans had assumed was vacuum began to shimmer and distort as hundreds of additional ships decloaked simultaneously. The humans hadn't brought 37 vessels to the fight. They had brought over 400, hidden by stealth. Technology so advanced that even the Croxans' most sophisticated sensors couldn't detect them. Impossible, Thane breathed, his arrogance cracking for the first time. Those ships weren't there. Our sensors would have detected them. Your sensors detect what we allow them to detect? Vasquez replied. You've been fighting civilizations that developed their technology in parallel with yours. We've had 2 centuries of uninterrupted advancement. The gap between your capabilities and ours is somewhat larger than you anticipated. The Croxan fleet formation wavered as their commanders tried to process what they were seeing. These weren't just more ships, they were vessels that incorporated technology beyond their understanding. Each human warship was sleek and predatory, bristling with weapons that seemed to bend physics around them. All units, Vasquez commanded, engage at will. Priority targets are their command ships and planet killer weapons. Let's remind the galaxy why you don't threaten human-protected worlds. The space battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. The Croxan fleet, despite its overwhelming numerical advantage, found itself outmaneuvered, outgunned, and completely outclassed by opponents who fought with a precision that bordered on supernatural. The human ships moved through space like schools of predatory fish, their formations flowing and adapting in real time to changing battlefield conditions. Their weapons fired streams of coherent energy that punched through Croxan shields like they weren't there, and their defensive systems turned aside attacks that should have vaporized them instantly. But it wasn't just the technology that gave the humans their advantage. It was the way they fought. Each ship's crew had been trained in combat scenarios that the Croxans couldn't even imagine. They had learned to fight in the crushing gravity of neutron stars, in the radioactive storms of dying suns, and in the twisted space around black holes. Target their flagship, Vasquez ordered as she watched a squadron of Croxan dreadnoughts simply disappear under concentrated human fire. It's time to end this. The Retribution's main guns swiveled toward the Worldbreaker, their targeting systems, locking onto the massive vessel with mechanical precision. The weapons that charged to life had been built using principles of physics that wouldn't be discovered by most galactic civilizations for another century. Fire, Vasquez commanded. The beam that lanced out from the Retribution was like a sword made of compressed starlight. It struck the Worldbreaker's shields and simply passed through them as if they weren't there. The Croxan flagship shuddered under impact that sent shockwaves through its massive hull. Direct hit, reported Captain Torres. Their shields are down, and we're reading massive internal damage. On the main screen, Emperor Thane's throne room was in chaos. Sparks flew from damaged systems, and the Emperor himself had been thrown from his seat. When he looked up at the human admiral, his yellow eyes were filled with something that Vasquez had never seen there before. Fear. This is impossible, Thane snarled. The Croxan Empire has conquered half the galaxy. We are the supreme military. Power in known space. You cannot defeat us with a handful of ships. We're not defeating you with a handful of ships, Vasquez replied calmly. We're defeating you with superior technology, better training, and 2 centuries of preparation. But most importantly, We're defeating you because you made the mistake of threatening innocents under human protection. She gestured to her tactical display, where the battle was clearly visible. Of the 600 Croxon ships that had entered the system, less than 100 remained functional. The rest had been destroyed or disabled by a human force that hadn't lost a single vessel. You have one chance, Emperor, Vasquez continued. Order your remaining ships to withdraw immediately. Abandon your expansion into this sector of space, and never, under any circumstances, attack another world under human protection. Thane's reptilian features twisted with rage and humiliation. The Croxon Empire does not negotiate with inferiors. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. Then, you die, Vasquez said simply. All units, finish them. The final phase of the battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The remaining Croxon ships, demoralized and outclassed, fell to human weapons with devastating efficiency. The Worldbreaker itself, the pride of the Croxon fleet, was systematically torn apart by concentrated fire from a dozen human warships. Emperor Thane's final transmission was broadcast across all frequencies, a scream of rage and disbelief that echoed through the void, as his flagship exploded in a ball of superheated plasma. When the battle was over, Admiral Vasquez stood quietly on her bridge, looking out at the debris field that had once been the most feared military force in the galaxy. Around her, her crew worked with professional efficiency to catalog the damage and prepare rescue operations for any surviving Croxon crew members. Admiral, Captain Torres reported, we're receiving transmissions from across the sector. Word of the battle is spreading faster than we anticipated. What kind of transmissions? Vasquez asked. Mostly expressions of disbelief, ma'am. But also, requests for protection. It seems that news of the Croxon defeat is inspiring other oppressed worlds to stand up to their oppressors. Vasquez nodded. This was exactly what they had hoped for. The Croxon Empire had maintained its power through fear and intimidation. Once that fear was broken, their entire structure would begin to crumble. Communications. Open a channel to the Nexari colony, she ordered. Commander Lex's face appeared on the screen, his large eyes wide with amazement and gratitude. Behind him, Dr. Vorthik and the other Nexari leaders stood in stunned silence. Admiral Vasquez, Beck said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't have words to express our gratitude. You've saved not just our colony, but potentially our entire species. That's what humans do, Commander, Vasquez replied. We protect those who can't protect themselves. But this is just the beginning. What do you mean? Dr. Vorthik asked, stepping forward. The galaxy has been dominated by predators like the Croxons for too long, Vasquez explained. Peaceful species like yours have been forced to live in fear, hoping that the bullies would overlook you. Bet ends today. She gestured to her tactical display, which now showed star charts extending far beyond the local system. Humanity is establishing the Galactic Protection Compact. Any species that wishes to live in peace can request our protection. Any aggressor that threatens our protected worlds will face the full might of the human defense fleet. Commander Lex looked stunned. You were talking about reshaping the entire political structure of the galaxy? Yes, Vasquez said simply. We are. Over the following weeks, the ripple effects of the Battle of Zephyria spread throughout known space. The Croxon Empire, its reputation shattered and its fleet decimated, began to collapse as subject worlds. Rose in rebellion? Other aggressive species suddenly found themselves facing human-backed resistance wherever they tried to expand. But it wasn't just military might that humanity brought to the galaxy. Human engineers worked alongside Nexari scientists to develop new technologies. Human diplomats helped negotiate peaceful solutions to conflicts that had raged for generations. Human teachers established schools on worlds where education had been forbidden by oppressive governments. Captain Sarah Chen found herself appointed as the first human liaison to Zephyria, working with Commander Lex to establish the colony as a model for human-alien cooperation. The Nexari, freed from the fear of conquest, threw themselves into scientific research with renewed enthusiasm. Their discoveries enhanced by human technology and protected by human strength. Dr. Vorthuk, in particular, became fascinated by human military technology. I still don't understand, she told Chun during one of their regular meetings. How did humanity advance so far in just 2 centuries? The technological gap is enormous. Chun smiled, looking out at the rebuilt city of Zephyria, where human and Ixari children played together in parks that had been battlefields just months before. We had the best motivation possible, Doctor. We knew that someday species like yours would need us. We weren't just developing technology. We were preparing to be worthy of the trust you placed in us, but we didn't place any trust in you. Vorthuk protested. We didn't even know you still existed. You sent out a distress signal, Chun replied, into the void, hoping that someone somewhere would hear it and care enough to help. That's trust, Doctor. Trust in the fundamental decency of intelligent life. And humanity spent 2 centuries making sure we would be worthy of that trust. As the months passed, the Galactic Protection Compact grew from a human initiative to a true alliance of peaceful species. The Nexari contributed their scientific expertise. Other species added their own unique capabilities. And humanity provided the military might and coordination that held it all together. Admiral Vasquez, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Compact Forces, established her headquarters on Zephyria as a symbol of what could be accomplished when different species worked together. The planet that had once been on the verge of extinction became the beating heart of a new galactic civilization. And in the deep archives of the Retribution, carefully preserved recordings of Emperor Thane's final transmission served as a reminder to any who might consider following the Croxan path. The age of conquest was over. The age of protection had begun. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians. And the stars themselves seemed brighter for their presence.